Emotionless execution, the secret to mental toughness. Stop reacting. Start executing. Your emotions were never meant to lead you. They were meant to serve you. Every time you let anger, fear, or doubt dictate your actions, you hand over your power. This audiobook will teach you how to detach from feelings, think with precision, and act with calm power in every situation. Mental toughness isn't emotionless because it's cold. It's emotionless because it's focused. You're not here to feel ready. You're here to move with control, regardless of how you feel. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop negotiating with yourself. Discipline begins the moment you stop arguing with yourself. The moment you stop giving emotion a vote in execution. The moment you silence the debate and give the command. That's the first truth of mental toughness. You cannot lead a mind you keep negotiating with. You know that voice. The one that says, maybe later. The one that says, you deserve a break. The one that turns every simple command into a discussion. That voice is the enemy of progress. And here's the reality. Your brain is not wired for discipline. It's wired for comfort. It's not built to make you great. It's built to keep you safe. Safe is survival. Safe is familiar. But safe is also average. When you understand that, you stop expecting discipline to feel good. You stop waiting for motivation. You stop asking yourself, do I feel ready? Because discipline doesn't care about feelings. Discipline answers one question only. What must be done? That's the key. The brain's default mode is negotiation, an endless internal courtroom where comfort always defends itself. But discipline interrupts that loop. Discipline walks in, slams the gavel, and says, case closed. Get done. You have a choice. Live like a commander or live like a defendant. One gives orders. The other explains excuses. You want power? Then stop negotiating. Stop giving emotion airtime. Stop letting moods decide motion. Say it with me. I don't feel like it. I do it anyway. That's not a slogan. That's the switch that turns an ordinary person into a weapon. Look at the Navy SEALs. Every morning, they rise before the sun. Not because it's fun, not because they feel like it, but because they've trained the mind to obey the mission. When the alarm goes off, there's no debate. The body follows the order. That's discipline. Command over conversation. Execution over emotion. Now think about crisis management leaders, people who lead through chaos, disaster, or war. They don't have the luxury of feeling ready. They don't get to ask, am I motivated today? They act. They execute. They follow the plan. Because in high pressure, negotiation kills. Every delay costs something. In your life, in a quieter way, is the same. Every moment you hesitate, you lose ground. Every argument you entertain with yourself steals momentum. The disciplined mind cuts through that noise. The disciplined mind knows emotion has no vote in execution. When you say, I'll start later, that's not logic. That's comfort taking control. When you say, I'm too tired, that's your brain protecting the habit of ease. When you say, I need to feel ready, you've already lost. Readiness isn't a feeling. It's a decision. It's a declaration that says, no matter what, I move. You want to know the truth? Winners don't wake up inspired every day. They wake up trained. They wake up programmed. They wake up knowing that emotion is background noise and execution is signal. That's the level you're aiming for. The level where action is automatic. Where I don't feel like it triggers the opposite reaction. You move faster. Because that's the mark of a disciplined mind. Discomfort becomes the cue, not the excuse. Every time you feel resistance, you're being given a test. A simple test that asks, who's in charge? You or your feelings? And every time you give in, you strengthen the voice of comfort. Every time you push through, you train command. That's how you build authority over yourself, through repetition. The first time you override emotion, it feels hard. The 10th time, it feels normal. The 100th time, it feels automatic. And that's the goal, to make discipline reflexive, to train obedience into your own mind. You can't talk your way to discipline. You train it. You don't feel your way into execution. You enforce it. Because every time you act without negotiation, you strengthen the chain of command inside your mind. You become your own leader. Let me make this clear. Self-discipline is self-command. You are both the general and the soldier. the one who gives the order and the one who executes it. Weakness happens when those two roles split. When the general gives the order and the soldier debates. When the command is given and emotion interrupts. But strength, true strength, is when there's no argument. Only obedience to the mission. You say you'll train, you train. You say you'll work, you work. You say you'll finish, you finish. No discussions, no feelings, no delays. You have a choice. You can build habits that obey you, or you can build habits that own you. Which one are you feeding today? Here's the truth. The most powerful people in the world have one thing in common. They act when others hesitate. They execute when others analyze. They move when others negotiate. That's not luck. That's not talent. That's mental discipline forged by repetition. Every morning, they prove who's in charge, thought or feeling, command or comfort. And you can do the same. You don't need permission. You don't need hype. You don't need a spark. You just need to stop asking yourself how you feel about the mission and start obeying the mission. That's the moment transformation begins. When you stop discussing action and start demanding it. When you stop analyzing emotions and start executing direction. That's where power lives in decisive movement. Understand this. Your mind is a tool. If you don't command it, it will command you. If you don't set direction, it will default to comfort. If you don't override emotion, it will override progress. You train the body with reps. You train the mind the same way. Repetition, consistency, command. And it starts with this mantra, I don't feel like it. I do it anyway. Say it when you wake up. Say it when the doubt hits. Say it when you want to quit. That phrase is your reset switch. It reminds you that your feelings are irrelevant to your standards. You are not what you feel. You are what you command. You are not what you promise. You are what you do. That's the key. So here's your task. Stop arguing with yourself. Decide once and follow through 1,000 times. Turn execution into instinct. Every time you move without emotion, you reclaim power. Every time you silence negotiation, you strengthen command. And every time you choose discipline over feeling, you build the foundation of an unbreakable mind. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to start. You don't need to feel good. You just need to do what's required. Discipline doesn't demand emotion. It demands obedience. Remember, emotion has no vote in execution. You've taken the first step, silencing the internal debate. Now it's time to master the next step, removing emotion from decision. You've stopped negotiating. Now, let's talk about detachment. Chapter 2. Detach or be controlled. Detachment is not numbness. It's awareness without reaction. It's clarity under fire. It's the ability to see everything, feel everything, but not be ruled by anything. That's the essence of emotional control. That's the foundation of mental toughness. You cannot control the world. You cannot control outcomes. You cannot control other people. But you can always control one thing, your response. And that's the key. Because until you control your response, you control nothing. The weak mind reacts. The strong mind observes. The weak mind takes everything personally. The strong mind watches everything objectively. The weak mind lets feelings dictate direction. The strong mind acts on principle. That's what detachment means. Not coldness, not indifference, but command. It's saying, yes, I feel it, but I will not be moved by it. It's saying, yes, the pressure is real, but I decide how I move. It's saying, I don't deny my emotions. I just don't obey them. You have to understand this. Emotion is data, not direction. It gives you information, but it does not deserve authority. Most people give emotion the steering wheel. They let anger decide words. They let fear decide hesitation. They let anxiety decide avoidance. And then they wonder why they feel powerless. Because the truth is, you can't drive the car when your feelings have the wheel. Look at the Stoic warriors. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire under constant threat. He faced betrayal, loss, and war, but his writings never show panic. Why? Because he practiced detachment. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you'll find strength." That's not philosophy, that's strategy. It's battlefield thinking. It's emotional armor. A Stoic doesn't ignore emotion. He observes it like a scientist. He says, this is fear. This is anger. This is pain. He names it, but he doesn't become it. Because once you name it, you can control it. Once you see it, you can separate from it. That's what detachment does. It creates space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you gain freedom. The same principle applies to martial artists. A fighter who loses control loses the fight. The moment emotion takes over, rage, panic, pride, precision disappears. In combat, you can't afford that. Your life depends on calm awareness. The masters understand. Emotion burns energy, clarity saves it. They breathe slower under pressure. They focus on form, not fear. They detach from the outcome and focus on execution. That's why they win. That's why discipline wins. Because detachment is not a lack of care. It's the ultimate form of control. It's saying, I'm so focused on what matters that I won't waste energy on what doesn't. Think about astronauts in orbit. They operate in an environment where one mistake means death. When alarms sound, heart rate rises, but they don't react emotionally. They follow procedure, step by step, calm, focused, detached. That's how you survive chaos. Not by feeling less, but by responding better. That's the mindset you need in life. When pressure hits, your emotions will surge. That's normal. But discipline is built when you recognize the surge and refuse to be owned by it. That's power, the power of pause. It's the gap between reaction and response. It's the breath before the decision. It's the second where the old version of you would have exploded, and the new version simply says, no, not this time. That's transformation. You have a choice in every moment, to react or to respond. Reacting is emotional reflex. Responding is conscious control. Reacting gives power away. Responding takes power back. That's why detachment matters, because it protects your control. You control nothing until you control your response. Every insult you ignore makes you stronger. Every delay you endure with patience builds mastery. Every setback you face calmly makes you untouchable. That's not weakness, that's dominance. That's what real power looks like. Silent, composed, unshakable. Understand this. Emotion isn't the enemy. Identification is. You can feel anger without becoming angry. You can feel fear without being afraid. You can feel pressure without panicking. You're not your thoughts. You're not your emotions. You're the awareness behind them. Detachment reminds you of that. It pulls you out of the storm and back into the cockpit. You stop being the passenger of your emotions. You become the pilot. That's control. Here's how you practice it in the real world. Pause before reacting. When something triggers you, stop. Take one breath. That single breath separates chaos from control. Label what you feel. This is anger. This is fear. The act of naming it weakens its grip. Return to the mission. Ask yourself, what is required of me right now? Then do only that. That's it. Simple, ruthless, effective. You don't need to fight your emotions. You just need to stop obeying them. Because once you detach, emotion becomes signal, not sabotage. People who master detachment move differently. They don't argue with chaos. They manage it. They don't complain about circumstances. They adapt. They don't let emotions steer. They let discipline drive. They see what others miss because their vision isn't clouded by reaction. They operate calmly in situations that make others collapse. They think clearly while everyone else feels loudly. That's the essence of mental toughness. Not being emotionless, but being emotionally disciplined. You can't build this overnight. It's a lifelong practice. But every time you stay calm, when you could have snapped, you win. Every time you think instead of react, you grow. Every time you detach, you reinforce control. That's how you rise above chaos. That's how you build internal order in an external storm. Because detachment isn't withdrawal, it's elevation. It's not escaping life, it's mastering it. Remember this. You control nothing until you control your response. Control that, and everything else falls in line. Lose that, and everything else falls apart. Detachment is your anchor in every storm. It's the weapon of the calm, the shield of the disciplined, the mark of the unshakable. So when life pushes, don't react. Observe, decide, execute. You have a choice, be driven by emotion or driven by command. Be ruled by chaos or ruled by clarity. Detach or be controlled. You've learned control through separation. Now, let's take it deeper into the battlefield of emotion itself. You've learned to detach. Now, you'll learn to weaponize that calm. Chapter 3. Think like a machine. Precision comes from clarity, not emotion. You can't think clearly when you're thinking emotionally. You can't make progress when every decision is filtered through impulse. The machine mindset is not about becoming cold or robotic. It's about becoming efficient, disciplined, and unshakably logical. It's about eliminating emotional friction so every action is streamlined, deliberate, and effective. That's how you operate at the highest level. That's how you remove hesitation, confusion, and noise. Because emotion clouds judgment. Emotion blurs execution. Emotion creates inconsistency. And inconsistency kills discipline. If you want to rise above chaos, you must learn to think like a machine. Machines don't react, they respond. They don't feel, they function. They don't waste time analyzing how they feel about a task. They complete it. That's the model. That's the energy. That's the mindset you must build. You wake up. You execute. You follow systems, not sensations. You follow standards, not moods. Because logic builds momentum. Emotion breaks it. That's the key. Emotion makes you inconsistent. Logic makes you precise. Discipline makes you unstoppable. Let's talk about removing emotional friction. Friction is what slows you down. The hesitation, the internal dialogue, the bursts of motivation followed by crashes of doubt. Machines don't experience friction because they're built on systems. You can be too. Start with routine. Routine is your code. It removes decision fatigue. It turns choices into commands, actions into defaults. You don't think about when to train, you just train. You don't debate when to work, you just work. You don't negotiate with yourself, you execute your programming. That's freedom. That's clarity. That's what it means to think like a machine. Every morning, same process. Every task, same focus. Every outcome, same standard. It's not about perfection. It's about precision. Next, data-driven decision-making. Emotion reacts. Data reveals. You can't grow if your decisions are based on moods. You grow when your decisions are based on measurement. That means tracking your habits, your progress, your results, and adjusting based on facts, not feelings. If the data says you're slacking, fix it. If the data says you're improving, double down. If the data says you're stuck, adjust the system. You don't get offended. You don't make excuses. You adjust with precision. That's the power of unemotional feedback. You don't attach your identity to performance. You attach it to progress. Machines don't take failure personally. They use it as input. You can too. That's how elite athletes train. That's how world-class operators improve. That's how entrepreneurs adapt. They review. They refine. They repeat. No self-pity. No panic. No ego. Just precision. And then, unemotional reflection. At the end of each day, the disciplined mind reviews like an engineer, not like a critic. What worked? What didn't? What needs adjustment? That's it. No judgment. No guilt. Just data. Emotion says, I failed. Logic says, that variable didn't work. Emotion says, I'm not good enough. Logic says, I need more reps. Emotion creates stories. Logic creates systems. That's the difference between a victim and a professional. Because when you think like a machine, failure isn't personal, it's diagnostic. You don't break. You debug. That's the mindset that keeps you sharp while others crumble. Now let's repeat your mantra. Eliminate emotion. Execute with logic. Adjust with precision. Say it again. Eliminate emotion. Execute with logic. Adjust with precision. This is the formula for clarity under pressure. This is how you stay calm when others panic. This is how you make decisions that move your life forward, not sideways. Because emotional decisions feel good, logical decisions build empires. When emotion drives your life, everything becomes unstable. One day you're motivated. The next day you're exhausted. One day you're focused. The next you're scattered. That's not control, that's chaos. Thinking like a machine means removing volatility. It means being the same person on your best day and your worst day. It means executing the plan no matter what your mood says. That's consistency, and consistency beats talent every time. Here's the truth. Most people fail not because they're weak, but because they make emotional decisions. They chase comfort when they should chase progress. They react to feelings instead of following frameworks. They quit not because they're incapable, but because they're impulsive. Machines don't quit. Machines adapt. Machines refine. That's the level of neutrality you need. Unemotional, unbiased, precise. It doesn't mean you lack passion. It means your passion is guided by purpose, not impulse. Emotion can be fuel, but never the driver. Logic drives. Discipline steers. Emotion follows. That's control. When you master this mindset, you become dangerous. Not because you're heartless, but because you're steady. Not because you don't feel, but because you don't fold. You can operate in chaos. You can think under pressure. You can make decisions based on principle, not panic. That's what separates the disciplined from the distracted. That's what makes the difference between the emotional and the exceptional. Because machines don't waste energy. They don't waste time. They don't waste focus. Every movement serves a purpose. Every action serves a mission. Every decision serves a standard. That's how you must live. So here's your command. Stop thinking like a reactor. Start thinking like a system. Replace how do I feel with what is required. Replace what do I want with what's effective. Every day, refine the code. Every day, improve the precision. Every day, eliminate the emotional noise that slows you down. Because clarity is efficiency. Efficiency is power. Power is control. And control is everything. You control nothing until you control your response. And your response begins with logic. Remember your mantra: eliminate emotion. Execute with logic. Adjust with precision. That's the machine mindset. That's the blueprint for unshakable focus. You've learned to detach. You've learned to think with precision. Now it's time to build the foundation that keeps your discipline sharp, even when motivation fades. Chapter 4. The Power of Neutral Thinking. Neutral thinking isn't positive thinking. Neutral thinking isn't negative thinking. Neutral thinking is clear thinking. It's the art of seeing things exactly as they are, not better, not worse, and executing accordingly. Because emotion distorts perception, positivity can blind you to reality. Negativity can paralyze you with fear. But neutrality? Neutrality is precision. Neutrality is control. Neutrality is the ability to see the situation for what it is, not what you wish it was, not what you fear it is. That's the foundation of elite performance. When you think neutrally, you eliminate drama. You eliminate self-talk that weakens execution. You eliminate the unnecessary noise that clutters your decisions. You don't ask, why me? You ask, what now? You don't say, I can't do this. You say, this is the next task. That's how high performers think. That's how warriors move. That's how machines win. No highs, no lows, just execution. Look at the Navy SEALs. When chaos hits, they don't start shouting affirmations. They don't spiral into panic. They stay neutral. They assess. They adapt. They act. If a mission goes wrong, emotion won't fix it. Execution will. If a teammate falls, panic won't help. Protocol will. If the enemy advances, fear won't protect them. Clarity will. That's why they train neutrality, because when the stakes are life and death, emotion is a liability. Neutral thinking keeps them alive. And in your life, in your daily battles, in your mental wars, it will keep you stable. Nick Saban, one of the most disciplined coaches alive, preaches the same principle: the process. He doesn't let his team think about winning or losing. He trains them to think about execution, one play, one rep, 1 second at a time. If they're up by 30 points, they execute. If they're down by 30 points, they execute. No emotion, no highs, no lows. Because emotion distracts from performance, and distraction destroys consistency. That's the key: consistency through neutrality. Saban's players don't ride waves of emotion. They live in rhythm. They're not controlled by results. They're controlled by standards. That's the difference between good and great. Good reacts. Great remains neutral. Olympic coaches know this too. At the highest level, everyone's talented. Everyone's strong. Everyone's prepared. What separates gold from silver isn't skill, it's control. The athlete who stays emotionally neutral, not cocky, not crushed, executes better. A gymnast doesn't think about falling. A diver doesn't think about perfection. They think about form, rhythm, breath, neutral anchors that keep the mind steady. Because once emotion enters, precision leaves. And when precision leaves, performance collapses. Neutral thinking keeps you focused on the next movement, the next task, the next rep. That's why it works. But here's what most people get wrong. They think neutrality means apathy. It doesn't. Neutrality isn't lack of care. It's lack of chaos. It's not indifference. It's focus. You still care. You still want to win. You still push. You just refuse to let emotion interfere with execution. It's not about suppressing feelings. It's about containing them, directing them, channeling them into performance. You can feel adrenaline. You can feel fear. You can feel pressure. But you don't act on them. You act through them. That's the difference between emotional reactivity and professional control. When something goes wrong, the emotional mind panics. The neutral mind evaluates. When something goes right, the emotional mind celebrates and relaxes. The neutral mind continues working. That's why most people plateau. They get too high when things go right and too low when things go wrong. Winners stay the same. No highs, no lows, just execution. That's not boring, that's powerful. Because stability creates longevity. And longevity wins over hype every single time. Neutral thinking is a discipline you build. Start with your language. Stop saying always and never. Those are emotional exaggerations. They amplify drama. Instead, describe things as they are. Not, I always fail. Say, I didn't meet the standard this time. Not everything's ruined. Say, this didn't go as planned. That's neutral speech. And neutral speech trains a neutral mind. Then apply it to your self-talk. When you make a mistake, don't spiral into emotion. Don't shame yourself. Don't sugarcoat it either. Simply identify the error, correct it, and move forward. No highs, no lows, just execution. That phrase should echo in your mind when life gets loud. Here's the beauty of neutral thinking. It gives you control when everything else is unstable. When the world is emotional, you're calm. When everyone panics, you analyze. When everyone quits, you adjust. That's how you gain a psychological edge. Neutrality gives you time. Time gives you clarity. And clarity gives you power. That's why elite performers, soldiers, and leaders train it daily. Because neutrality is mental armor. When your mind stays neutral, chaos loses its power. Let's repeat this truth. You are not your feelings. You are your focus. You are not your outcomes. You are your process. You are not your emotions. You are your execution. Neutral thinking anchors you to that truth. It's not about being robotic. It's about being relentless. It's not about denying emotion. It's about denying emotion control. Every time you choose neutrality over drama, you win. Every time you stay level when others swing, you rise. Every time you stay calm when it counts, you build inner strength. That's how you train an unbreakable mind. So from this moment forward, drop the emotional swings. Stop chasing highs. Stop fearing lows. You don't need them. They waste energy. They cost clarity. They break rhythm. You don't need to feel amazing. You just need to execute well. Repeat your mantra. No highs. No lows. Just execution. That's how you build stability. That's how you build consistency. That's how you build power that doesn't depend on mood, motivation, or momentum. Because emotion fades. Neutrality endures. Stay steady. Stay sharp. Stay neutral. You've learned to think clearly and act precisely. Now it's time to develop the daily framework that locks this mindset into your life. Chapter 5. The Discipline of Stillness. Stillness is not the absence of movement. Stillness is the command center of focus. It's calmness in chaos, clarity under pressure, control in the middle of noise. When the world moves fast, the undisciplined mind gets lost in the motion. But the disciplined mind, the still mind, becomes sharper as the storm grows louder. Because here's the truth, a still mind doesn't freeze, it observes. A still mind doesn't retreat, it recalibrates. A still mind doesn't react, it responds. That's the essence of mastery. That's the difference between control and collapse. Say it with me. Still mind. Sharp response. Controlled outcome. The disciplined mind doesn't chase every thought that appears. It doesn't drown in emotion or drown in noise. It stands at the center, watching, analyzing, directing. That's what stillness gives you. Perspective. Without perspective, emotion takes over. Without stillness, precision disappears. Stillness isn't passive. It's power, concentrated power. When your body is still, your mind becomes aware. When your breath slows, your focus sharpens. When your thoughts settle, your control returns. That's why every elite performer, warrior, and leader cultivates stillness. Look at the Navy SEAL in combat. He's surrounded by chaos, explosions, noise, pressure, uncertainty. But inside, he's calm. He's breathing. He's thinking. He's executing. That calm is trained. It's not natural. It's discipline. The same with martial artists. They don't just train the body. They train the breath. Because they know, when the breath is calm, the mind is calm. When the mind is calm, the body obeys. That's control. A still mind produces sharp reactions. A frantic mind produces sloppy mistakes. You can't control chaos, but you can control how you meet it. That's why you must practice stillness every day. Because in silence, you sharpen awareness. In calm, you regain command. Still mind. Sharp response. Controlled outcome. Let's talk about how to train stillness. It begins with the breath. Your breath is the remote control for your nervous system. Fast breathing fuels panic. Slow breathing signals power. When stress hits, don't speak. Don't react. Breathe. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. For seconds in. For seconds out. It's simple, but it's a weapon. The moment you slow your breath, you interrupt the emotional cascade that steals your clarity. Breath control is command control. Use it in traffic. Use it in conflict. Use it before every major decision. Because if your breath is steady, your mind is steady. That's the power of stillness in motion. Next, meditation. Meditation isn't about escaping the world. It's about mastering it. It's not about sitting cross-legged and humming. It's about learning to observe your thoughts instead of becoming them. When you meditate, you practice detachment. You see the storm inside your mind, the thoughts, the emotions, the memories, and you watch them pass without reacting. At first, it's uncomfortable. Your mind will resist. It will tell you it's bored, busy, restless. That's the test. The more you resist the noise, the louder it gets. The more you observe it, the quieter it becomes. Meditation is mental strength training. It builds endurance, patience, and control. You learn to separate awareness from reaction, and that separation gives you power. Because once you can watch your thoughts, you no longer have to obey them. That's stillness in its purest form. And then, there's the mental reset ritual. Every high performer has one. A moment to stop, breathe, reset, and recenter. For some, it's journaling. For others, it's walking alone in silence. For a few, it's sitting quietly for 5 minutes before a big decision. The form doesn't matter. The intention does. You're teaching the mind to return to stillness at will. You're creating a reset point, a command line for clarity. Because chaos will find you. Pressure will come. Stillness is your anchor. Without it, you drift into reaction. With it, you return to control. Still mind. Sharp response. Controlled outcome. Repeat that until it's embedded in your instincts. You see, stillness is not just for monks or mystics. It's for leaders, operators, builders, for anyone who needs to stay calm under stress. The calmest person in the room holds the most power. The quietest one usually sees the most clearly. And the stillest one always leads. Because when everyone else is reacting, they're observing. When everyone else is talking, they're thinking. When everyone else is moving without direction, they're moving with purpose. That's the mark of mastery, the ability to stay calm while others lose control. Here's the truth. Most people mistake movement for progress. They think being busy means being productive. But without stillness, all that motion is noise. Activity without clarity is chaos disguised as effort. Stillness creates the gap between action and wisdom. It allows you to see, plan, and execute with precision. You can't command what you can't see. You can't see when your mind is loud. Stillness brings vision. Vision brings control. Control brings results. That's the order. That's the formula. If you want real power, master the pause. The pause before the reaction. The pause before the decision. The pause before the response. That's where control lives, in the space between emotion and execution. When you can stand in that space calmly, you've already won. Because no one can manipulate a still mind. No situation can shake a centered spirit. Stillness doesn't make you slower. It makes you surgical. Stillness doesn't make you passive. It makes you precise. Still mind. Sharp response. Controlled outcome. That's your mantra. That's your reset. That's your weapon. So build it. Train it. Guard it. Every morning, take 2 minutes of stillness before the world begins. Every night, take 2 minutes of stillness before it ends. Let silence become your strategy. Let calm become your edge. Let stillness become your discipline. Because in a world that's addicted to noise, the calm mind becomes the rarest and most powerful force of all. You've built stillness, the foundation of control. Now, it's time to apply that calm focus toward relentless action. Chapter 6. Train reaction, not motivation. Motivation fades. Discipline doesn't. Motivation is emotional fuel, unstable, inconsistent, temporary. Discipline is built on repetition, stable, automatic, permanent. You can't rely on how you feel. You can only rely on how you've trained. That's the law of performance. That's how elite minds and elite bodies operate. Discipline replaces motivation. Training replaces emotion. The average person moves only when they feel inspired. They wait for the right mood, the right day, the right spark. But the world doesn't wait. Life doesn't pause for your feelings. The disciplined don't wait for a spark. They light the fire themselves. They don't think, should I do this? They've trained their reaction to say, do it anyway. That's the power of automatic response. That's the essence of control. Discipline replaces motivation. Training replaces emotion. Think about the soldier in a firefight. There's no time to think. No room for emotion. Fear is real, but reaction is faster. Every motion, reload, reposition, communicate, is automatic. It's muscle memory built through thousands of drills. Repetition burned the hesitation out of them. They've trained the body and the brain to move without debate. That's not luck. That's design. That's what you must build. Trained reaction over emotional impulse. When things go wrong, when pressure spikes, when chaos hits, emotion freezes you. Training frees you. Discipline replaces motivation. Training replaces emotion. Now think about the firefighter who runs into the burning building. No motivational speech needed. No self-talk required. Because they've trained that reaction. They don't analyze, they execute. They don't debate, they move. Every action has been drilled until it's automatic. Because in crisis, emotion kills performance. That's the paradox of mastery. The more you train your reactions, the less emotion has power over you. And the less emotion has power, the stronger your control becomes. High-level athletes understand this too. You don't see a world-class tennis player getting hyped before every shot. You see calm. You see rhythm. You see repetition. Why? Because they've trained for hours, hitting the same serve, the same stroke, the same movement, until it's instinct. Their body executes before their mind interferes. Their training overrides their emotions. That's what separates them from amateurs. Not talent, not luck, but conditioning. You can't depend on adrenaline. You can't depend on motivation. You can only depend on what you've trained yourself to do when motivation dies. And it will die. Every single day. That's why you must train your response to replace your mood. Here's the mistake most people make. They think discipline is about inspiration. It's not. It's about automation. Discipline isn't something you decide every morning. It's something you've already programmed into your system. When you train enough, action becomes default. You stop negotiating with yourself because the decision was already made in the last 1,000 repetitions. That's how systems replace feelings. That's how soldiers, athletes, surgeons, and operators perform under pressure. They don't rise to the occasion. They fall to their level of training. You will too. So the question isn't, are you motivated? The question is, what have you trained to do when motivation fails? Let's get practical. To train reaction, you must design repetition. Pick the behavior you want automatic. Waking early, working out, writing, focusing. Then train it until it becomes instinct. Set a fixed trigger. Example: alarm goes off, stand up. Don't think. Don't scroll. Don't delay. Move. Do it again tomorrow. Do it again the next day. Do it until there's no debate, only execution. That's reaction training. Every trigger should lead to a trained action. Every cue should activate discipline. This is how you rewrite the brain's default loop, not through emotion, but through repetition. You're not waiting to feel like it. You're conditioning do it anyway. Discipline replaces motivation. Training replaces emotion. In neuroscience, it's called habit automation. In military doctrine, it's called immediate action. In philosophy, it's called virtue through practice. But the principle is the same across all domains. You become what you repeatedly do, not what you intend, not what you feel, what you repeat. That's why repetition matters more than intensity. It's not about doing something once with passion. It's about doing it daily without hesitation. Because repetition builds reflex. Reflex builds control. Control builds confidence. That's the real strength, calm execution, not emotional hype. Emotion is a poor guide. It lies to you. It fluctuates. It manipulates. One day, it pushes you forward. The next day, it pulls you back. Training doesn't care. Training doesn't fluctuate. Training doesn't ask permission. That's why you must anchor your discipline to structure, not to feeling. Your structure is your freedom. If you train yourself to act the same way, no matter how you feel, you become unstoppable. Because now, your behavior is consistent, not your mood. And consistency compounds. Every small act of trained discipline builds momentum, identity, and belief. Soon, you don't say, I need motivation. You say, this is who I am. That's the transformation from emotion-driven to identity-driven. The world rewards the person who reacts with calm precision, not emotional noise. The one who executes without hesitation. The one whose habits are sharper than their moods. Because that person doesn't break when motivation disappears. They rise when others stop. That's the power of reaction training. It's the blueprint of mental toughness. When you act automatically, your mind is free to think strategically. When your reactions are trained, your emotions can't hijack you. When your training is solid, your discipline is unshakable. Discipline replaces motivation. Training replaces emotion. Repeat it until it becomes your instinct. You don't need to chase inspiration anymore. You don't need to wait for the right moment. Train until action becomes your default setting. Train until discipline becomes your language. Train until reaction becomes who you are. Because that's the secret, the real secret to emotionless execution. You don't rise to your motivation. You fall to your training. And if your training is strong, you never fall far. You've learned to train reaction, to eliminate hesitation and build automation. Now it's time to master what drives that training. The mental systems that keep you performing when everything else falls apart. Chapter 7. Emotional Detachment in Relationships. You can love without losing control. You can care without collapsing. You can connect deeply without surrendering your center. That's the essence of emotional detachment in relationships. Not coldness, not indifference. Control. Emotional detachment isn't about withdrawing. It's about remaining anchored while others move through chaos. It's about keeping your power, your awareness, your composure, your standards, even when emotions try to hijack you. Because the moment you lose control, you lose respect from yourself and from others. Relationships test discipline more than anything else. Not the gym, not business, not physical endurance, emotional endurance. You can push through pain in a workout, but can you stay calm when someone insults you? Can you remain composed when they withdraw affection? Can you stay grounded when someone tries to manipulate your reaction? That's real strength. That's where emotional control becomes a weapon. Emotional detachment isn't a wall, it's armor. Armor that allows love, but not chaos. Compassion, but not collapse. You can love without losing control. You can care without collapsing. Let's get this straight. Detachment is not disconnection. Detachment is awareness without attachment. It's the ability to see people as they are, not as your emotions want them to be. To respond to truth, not to fantasy. Most people confuse attachment for love. They mistake dependency for connection. And when that dependency is threatened, they crumble. That's not love. That's addiction. Real love respects boundaries. Real love exists in strength, not desperation. Real love is calm, not chaotic. That's what emotional detachment teaches you. Love from clarity, not need. Connect from power, not fear. When you attach your peace to another person's behavior, you hand them control over your life. Every mood swing, every opinion, every silence dictates how you feel. You become a puppet pulled by invisible strings of emotion. But when you're detached, you see it for what it is, a test. A chance to stay grounded. A moment to respond, not react. Someone ghosts you? You breathe. You observe. You move on. Someone argues to provoke you? You stay calm. You hold your line. Someone tries to manipulate your guilt? You stand firm. Because you understand, their behavior reveals them. Your response defines you. That's emotional detachment in action. Let's use a real example. A partner says something cruel during an argument. Your emotional instinct is to match the energy, to defend, to attack, to hurt back. But detachment interrupts that impulse. You stop. You breathe. You let the silence stretch. Now you're not reacting. You're observing. You're watching their emotion without letting it dictate yours. You've shifted from participant to commander. That's power. That's self-respect. That's control. Because the moment you react, they own you. But the moment you stay calm, you own the situation. Look at martial artists. The greatest ones are never reactive. They don't fight from emotion. They fight from control. They don't get angry when attacked. They get focused. They don't swing wildly. They wait. They read. They counter. Relationships work the same way. When you react emotionally, you lose awareness. When you stay calm, you see patterns. You see truth. You see intention. Emotional detachment lets you see clearly through the fog of connection. That's how you protect your peace without closing your heart. You can love without losing control. You can care without collapsing. Detachment also builds boundaries. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're protection. They define where your responsibility ends and someone else's begins. Without detachment, boundaries feel like guilt. You'll overextend, overexplain, overgive. But when you're detached, boundaries become natural. You can say no without apology. You can walk away without hatred. You can protect your energy without fear. Because you understand, respect isn't demanded. It's enforced by consistency. And that consistency comes from discipline, the discipline of detachment. Here's the hard truth. People test you not by what they say, but by how you react. When they see you lose control, they learn how to manipulate it. When they see you remain calm, they learn where your limits are. The one who controls their emotions controls the dynamic. You don't need to yell to be strong. You don't need to chase to prove you care. You don't need to argue to defend your worth. Your silence, your composure, your calm presence, that's your power. It tells the world, I'm not here to play emotional games. I'm here to live by clarity and command. That's emotional detachment, not arrogance, but authority. Now let's talk about rejection. Rejection hurts because it challenges your ego's illusion of control. But rejection is never about your value. It's about alignment. Detachment allows you to see that. It teaches you to accept endings with grace instead of resistance. Because what's meant for you doesn't require you to beg, chase, or break. When you detach, rejection becomes redirection. Loss becomes space for strength. Pain doesn't define you. Your response does. You can love without losing control. You can care without collapsing. So how do you train emotional detachment in relationships? You train it like any other discipline through pause, awareness, and pattern. When emotion spikes, pause. When words provoke, breathe. When fear rises, observe. That pause gives you power. That breath returns your control. Then, reflect. What triggered the emotion? Was it truth or insecurity? Was it love or fear of loss? Awareness turns emotion into data, and data allows you to act strategically, not emotionally. You repeat this until calm becomes your instinct, until reaction turns into reflection, until peace becomes your default setting. Emotional detachment doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. It doesn't make you distant, it makes you directed. You stop trying to control others, and you start commanding yourself. You stop clinging to approval, and you start protecting your peace. And when you operate from that state, you attract relationships that match your control, not your chaos. People who respect boundaries. People who don't demand emotional labor for validation. People who value calm over drama. That's the real reward of emotional detachment. Freedom through clarity. Remember this mantra and make it your internal command. You can love without losing control. You can care without collapsing. Because strength doesn't mean isolation. It means choosing peace over panic. It means loving with intention, not attachment. Stay calm when others are chaotic. Stay clear when others are confused. Stay in command when others are emotional. That's emotional detachment. That's emotional power. That's emotional freedom. You've learned to control yourself in relationships. Now it's time to control your environment. Because even the strongest mind can't thrive in constant distraction. Chapter 8. The Logic of Pain. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is information. Pain is the body's and mind's way of saying, pay attention. You've been trained to fear pain. You've been conditioned to escape it, medicate it, or hide from it. But pain is not suffering. Pain is feedback. And feedback is data. Data you can use to adapt, grow, and strengthen. Pain teaches. Emotion reacts. Choose to learn. The undisciplined mind dramatizes pain. It turns feedback into a story. It says, this shouldn't be happening to me. It searches for blame, for pity, for escape. But the disciplined mind studies pain. It says, why is this happening? What is it teaching me? That's the difference between breakdown and breakthrough. One reacts. The other reflects. You can't avoid pain, but you can decide what it means. That's your power. That's your control. Pain teaches. Emotion reacts. Choose to learn. Every great transformation begins with discomfort. In military training, recruits are broken down deliberately, physically, mentally, emotionally. It's not cruelty. It's calibration. They strip away ego, fear, and fragility to expose truth. You don't need comfort to perform. You need control. The drill instructor doesn't teach through comfort. They teach through pressure. Pain becomes the test. And every push-up, every cold night, every sprint in the dirt ingrains a deeper lesson. Endurance is not built in ease. It's built in exposure. The body adapts. The mind follows. And soon, what once felt unbearable becomes routine. That's the logic of pain. You condition yourself to operate calmly inside discomfort. You train the nervous system to stay functional while the rest of the world collapses. Pain teaches. Emotion reacts. Choose to learn. The same logic applies in emotional pain, loss, rejection, failure. When someone you love leaves, when a plan collapses, when the world doesn't match your expectation, pain arrives. Most people drown in that pain because they label it personal. They think it means something about their worth, their luck, their fate. But pain is not a verdict. It's data. It's showing you where your attachment was misplaced. It's showing you where your dependency was too strong. It's showing you where your identity was built on something external. If you study the pain instead of dramatizing it, you learn faster. You grow deeper. You evolve. Because pain has logic. It's feedback pointing toward your blind spot. Every pain has a message. It's your job to decode it, not to collapse under it. Let's take recovery after loss. Someone passes away. Someone disappears. Someone betrays you. Emotion says, I'll never recover. But logic says, something inside me needs to be rebuilt. Pain reveals what was untrained. Your coping systems, your patience, your perspective. It exposes weakness, but not to humiliate you, to invite you to strengthen it. That's how the disciplined mind reframes pain. Not as tragedy, but as a diagnostic. What can I learn? What does this show me about myself? What skill or discipline must I now build? Ask those questions, and pain transforms into process. Because the goal isn't to feel less. The goal is to interpret better. Pain teaches. Emotion reacts. Choose to learn. The same principle applies in rebuilding after failure. When your business collapses, when your idea dies, when your plan backfires, pain floods the system. The emotional mind says, I'm done. The logical mind says, I'm collecting data. Every failure gives you a map, where the flaw was, where the blind spot lived, where you stopped paying attention. It hurts, yes, but it's also the cleanest, most honest teacher you'll ever have. Because success hides flaws. Pain exposes them, and exposure is progress. When you train yourself to see pain as data, you eliminate fear. Because now pain isn't chaos, it's communication. That's how elite soldiers, entrepreneurs, and athletes think. They don't dramatize pain, they study it. They ask, what's the signal? What needs adaptation? And they adjust. No breakdown, just recalibration. The truth is this: you will feel pain your entire life. From loss, from growth, from time, from truth. You can't avoid it, but you can choose your relationship with it. When you personalize pain, you suffer. When you analyze pain, you evolve. That's why the strongest minds aren't the ones that feel nothing. They're the ones that translate everything. They know how to look at pain and extract logic, not drama. They know how to say, this hurts, but it's teaching me something I need. That shift, from reaction to reflection, is the birth of wisdom. Let's simplify this into your personal practice. When pain hits, pause, breathe, analyze. Step 1, pause. Don't react immediately. The emotional mind moves fast but thinks poorly. Step 2, breathe. Return to physical control. Calm the nervous system before engaging the logical brain. Step 3, analyze. Ask, what is this pain trying to show me? What part of me is resisting growth? What can I build stronger because of this? That's the framework. That's how you extract logic from pain. It's not about avoiding emotion. It's about not letting emotion own you. Pain teaches. Emotion reacts. Choose to learn. Pain also builds respect for effort, for growth, for patience. When you endure, you earn awareness. You start to see life not as punishment, but as a sequence of lessons. The more pain you face, the more emotional precision you develop. You stop asking, why me, and start asking, what now? And that question turns pain into progress. Because pain without meaning breaks you. Pain with meaning builds you. So when the next wave hits, the failure, the heartbreak, the rejection, the fatigue, don't run. Don't dramatize it. Don't label it as unfair. Study it. Decode it. Learn from it. Pain is the purest feedback the universe gives you. It never lies. It always points you toward growth. The disciplined mind sees pain not as punishment, but as guidance. It asks for the lesson, not the comfort. And that's how it wins, quietly, consistently, endlessly. Pain teaches. Emotion reacts. Choose to learn. Pain is logic in disguise. It's order inside chaos. It's truth wrapped in discomfort. The question is, will you study it or will you suffer from it? You have a choice, and that choice defines your evolution. You've learned to see pain as data, not drama, as a tool for mastery instead of a trigger for emotion. Now, it's time to learn how to rebuild that mastery into mental systems that make pain productive. Chapter 9, Build Mental Protocols. You cannot trust your emotions. You cannot rely on motivation. You cannot depend on the mood of the moment to determine your behavior. That's why you build mental protocols. Protocols eliminate hesitation. Protocols replace panic with clarity. Protocols tell your mind exactly what to do before chaos, during chaos, and after chaos. That's how disciplined people operate under pressure. They don't guess. They don't feel. They execute. Protocol over panic. Process over passion. A mental protocol is a system, a preloaded command sequence that tells your brain, when this happens, I respond like this. It's not motivation. It's not emotion. It's automation. You see it in the military. When the alarm sounds, soldiers don't discuss what to do. They follow protocol. When the mission shifts, they don't freeze. They execute the next step in the sequence. Emotion is irrelevant because they've already rehearsed the response 1,000 times. That's what you need, a command structure for your own mind. One that activates discipline even when you're tired, stressed, or uncertain. Protocol over panic. Process over passion. The average person lives reactively. They wake up and see how they feel. They make decisions based on mood, not mission. And then they wonder why nothing is consistent. Discipline doesn't work that way. Discipline doesn't check in with emotion. Discipline checks in with protocol. Your feelings are variables. Your systems are constants. When the variables fluctuate, the constants hold the line. That's how you execute through chaos, not by feeling ready, but by being trained. You don't rise to motivation. You fall to protocol. Protocol over panic. Process over passion. Let's start with your morning structure. Every day should begin the same way, by command, not by comfort. Why? Because the morning sets your mental tone for the next 16 hours. If your morning starts in chaos, your day follows. If your morning starts in clarity, your day obeys. So build a sequence, a checklist that never changes. Wake up, no snooze. Move, physical activation before thought. Reset, breathing, journaling, or silence. Plan, review priorities, not feelings. No decisions, no debates, no emotion, only sequence. When you repeat this enough, your brain stops negotiating. It simply obeys the pattern, and that pattern becomes protection from anxiety, from fatigue, from distraction. Because when the mind knows what to do next, it doesn't waste energy deciding. That's the secret. Discipline isn't about control, it's about clarity. You're building clarity through repetition. Protocol over panic. Process over passion. Next, build a decision hierarchy. This is how you think logically when the situation gets loud. You define your priorities in advance. So when stress hits, you don't think emotionally, you act strategically. Example: mission, what must get done, no matter what. Maintenance, what supports the mission, sleep, nutrition, training. Minor, what can wait or be ignored. When fatigue hits, your brain reverts to instinct. If your instinct is emotional, you'll fold. If your instinct is structured, you'll execute. That's what hierarchy gives you, clarity under cognitive load. You pre-decided what matters. You've already filtered the noise. Now, when emotion rises, you simply follow your map. Emotion wants to react. Protocol wants to respond. You choose response. Protocol over panic. Process over passion. The next layer, fail-safes. Because fatigue, failure, and chaos will happen. That's life. The disciplined don't avoid those moments. They prepare for them. Fail-safes are backup systems that keep you moving when willpower collapses. Example: you're too tired to work out? The fail-safe is a non-negotiable 10-minute minimum. You show up, period. You're emotionally drained? The fail-safe is to execute one task from your list. Not because it's perfect, but because it keeps the pattern alive. You feel unfocused? The fail-safe is breath and reset. Step away, 10 slow inhales, return to execution. Fail-safes prevent emotional collapse from becoming behavioral collapse. They convert "I can't" into "I will do something." Because consistency beats intensity. You don't need to feel strong. You need to remain steady. That's the purpose of a fail-safe. Protect your momentum at all costs. Now, let's be clear. Building mental protocols doesn't mean living without emotion. It means building systems that work despite emotion. Emotions are visitors. Protocols are infrastructure. Visitors come and go. Infrastructure stands. When you operate from protocol, you neutralize the volatility of human feeling. You become predictable to yourself. Predictable execution. Predictable progress. Predictable power. The world doesn't respect passion. It respects results. And results are built from systems that outlast mood. Protocol over panic. Process over passion. Here's what emotional people never understand. Freedom doesn't come from flexibility. It comes from structure. The more you automate, the more energy you conserve for strategy and creativity. The more you systematize, the less stress you feel when chaos hits. You're not suppressing emotion. You're engineering stability. That's what the greats do. In war, in business, in sport. They don't get caught up in the noise. They follow protocol. Their routines aren't cages, they're compasses. Their structure doesn't limit them, it frees them. Because when the system takes care of the small decisions, the mind is free to focus on the big ones. That's mastery. That's discipline. That's control. So how do you build your own mental protocol? Step 1. Identify the 3 points of collapse, where you most often lose focus, control, or drive. Step 2. Build a simple, repeatable plan for each, a trigger and a response. Step 3. Drill it daily until it becomes instinct. When fatigue hits, I execute one small task. When emotion spikes, I breathe, observe, delay reaction. When distraction appears, I reset my focus timer and return to the mission. No debate, no decision, just response. That's how discipline becomes your default operating system. Over time, these protocols compound. They become invisible habits, quiet rituals, silent commands. You won't need to remind yourself what to do. You'll just do it. You won't need motivation to start. You'll already be moving. You won't need control because you'll be control. That's the transformation, from emotion-driven to system-driven, from impulse to instruction, from panic to precision. Protocol over panic, process over passion. When everything around you collapses, when stress spikes, when the world loses its balance, your system holds. Because it's trained, because it's tested, because it's yours. You've removed emotion from the equation. You replaced it with process. That's what makes you unstoppable. Not feeling, not fire, not hype. Process. You've built your structure. You've built your stability. Now it's time to build your identity, the unshakable self that lives behind all this control. Chapter 10, The Emotionless Mindset. This is the transformation. This is where everything you've learned comes together. The power of detachment, the strength of stillness, the clarity of structure, the logic of control. Everything you've built, the protocols, the habits, the composure, it all leads here. To the final state of mastery, the emotionless mindset. Understand this. Emotionless doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop being owned by what you feel. You can still experience emotion, anger, fear, sadness, desire. But you experience it through the filter of awareness, not reaction. You don't drown in your feelings. You observe them. You don't chase emotion. You channel it. That's emotional control. That's awareness plus discipline. The emotionless mindset isn't cold, it's composed. It isn't robotic, it's refined. You don't need to destroy emotion. You need to command it. Because when you control your emotion, you control your execution. And execution is what defines success. You are not your feelings. You are your focus. Let's make this clear. Every emotion wants to pull you somewhere. Anger wants to pull you toward revenge. Fear wants to pull you toward safety. Desire wants to pull you toward distraction. And most people follow wherever emotion leads. They are slaves to their inner storms. But the disciplined mind doesn't follow. It directs. It stands still while everything inside wants to move. It chooses logic over impulse. It executes while others react. That's the difference between power and weakness. Weakness obeys emotion. Power commands emotion. You are not your feelings. You are your focus. Let's define the code of the emotionless mindset, your final operating system. Awareness. You must see what's happening inside you before it controls you. Observe your emotions like data, not as truth, but as signals. Awareness gives you space to decide instead of react. Remember, you can't control what you won't confront. Discipline. Awareness without discipline is useless. You must act according to principles, not preferences. When you say you'll do something, do it, no matter the mood. Discipline makes awareness actionable. It turns intention into consistency. Logic. Emotion distorts. Logic aligns. When the mind is storming, step back and analyze. What's real? What's noise? Logical thought strips away drama and reveals direction. Logic is your weapon. Use it to cut through confusion. Silence. You don't need to prove. You don't need to announce. Silence is strength. It protects energy, builds mystique, and centers focus. The disciplined mind operates quietly but effectively. When the world talks, you work. When the world reacts, you execute. Execution. The final stage of control, where thought becomes action. You don't wait for readiness. You don't seek motivation. You act because the system demands it. Execution is the expression of control, proof that the mind commands the body. This is the code. Awareness, discipline, logic, silence, execution. The 5 pillars of the emotionless mindset. The framework for mental toughness. You are not your feelings. You are your focus. You've heard this message in different forms across every chapter. Now it all converges. When you stop negotiating with yourself, you gain direction. When you detach from emotion, you gain clarity. When you focus like a machine, you gain precision. When you build systems, you gain consistency. Each principle leads to one result, control. The disciplined mind doesn't react to chaos, it manages it. It doesn't collapse under stress, it functions through it. It doesn't lose itself in emotion, it uses emotion as energy. That's the essence of toughness, calm under fire. You're not your feelings. You are your focus. Every day is a test of control. You'll face moments that challenge your patience, provoke your ego, or tempt your comfort. But those are your opportunities, not your enemies. Each trigger is a chance to practice awareness. Each obstacle is a reminder to execute your protocol. Each emotion is a signal to return to discipline. You have a choice, always, to react or to respond, to collapse or to command, to feel your way through life or to focus your way through it. That's the moment where weakness dies and discipline begins. You can't fake this. You must live it. Because control isn't something you learn, it's something you train. Daily, relentlessly, quietly, through repetition, through structure, through focus. The emotionless mindset isn't a theory. It's a lifestyle. You've built awareness. You see your emotions clearly. You've built discipline. You act without debate. You've built logic. You think with precision. You've built silence. You execute without noise. You've built systems. You move automatically. Now you are what you repeat. Now you're what you focus on. And if you focus on control, you become control. If you focus on clarity, you become clarity. If you focus on discipline, you become unbreakable. That's the transformation. That's the goal. That's the code. You are not your feelings. You are your focus. Emotion will visit. Let it. Fear will whisper. Hear it. Doubt will surface. Face it. But nothing owns you anymore. Because you've trained your response. You've built your systems. You forge your code. You think clearly. You act decisively. You live deliberately. You are calm under fire. You are composed under pressure. You are disciplined under chaos. That's what the emotionless mindset creates, a weaponized calm. The world will scream. You will stay still. The world will panic. You will execute. The world will feel. You will focus. Because now, you're built differently. Now, you command yourself. Now, you live the code. Awareness, discipline, logic, silence, execution, and always remember, you're not your feelings. You are your focus. You've built the foundation of an unbreakable mind. You've learned the code. Now live it. Every day, every decision, every moment. Emotionless execution, calm power in motion. That's how warriors think. That's how leaders act. That's how you win. You've learned what most people never will. How to stop being a prisoner to emotion and start being a commander of execution. Feelings rise, but they pass. Emotions shout, but they fade. Control remains. When you detach from feelings, you don't lose your humanity. You gain your freedom. From this point forward, your calm is your weapon. Your focus is your armor. Your logic is your advantage. Every reaction you control makes you stronger. Every silence you keep sharpens your power. You are not what you feel. You are what you execute. You are not what you want. You are what you repeat. Detach from emotion. Attach to purpose. Act with precision. Think with control. Move with calm. This is emotionless execution. Now stop feeling. Start performing.